We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 Strength and Health Authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode. Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Strong by Design podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Coach Chris Wilson. I am hosting this particular episode. If you've been listening to Strong by Design, you know we kind of take turns here. You have Coach Tanya, who does a lot of holistic health content. We have Mike, of course, the founder of Critical Bench, who does a lot of leadership and coaching and faith-based episodes. I kind of float all around. I hit a little bit of everything. On Strong by Design, obviously, we like to go in all directions, talking about being strong in your body, in your mind, in your spirit. Today, I think we're doing a good job of blending all those things together in this conversation with our guest today, which I'm excited about, just to get to know her better in this conversation. And in doing that, you, our listeners, get to know her better. Before we get to our guest, I would like to take a quick moment to say thank you so much to all our return listeners. We couldn't, have come this far over the last, now we're in our 4th year doing the podcast. And we just so appreciate all the great sentiments, all the great reviews, the sharing that you're doing of the episodes with friends and family members after you've listened to an episode that touches you or moves you in a certain way. And we just thank you so much. And if you're a new listener to the show, well, thank you. You're in for a real treat today. I think this is going to be a really fun conversation. And I look forward to just providing great content for you in the future, as we always try to do here on the show. And so if you would, at the end of this episode, hit that 5-star rating and or give us a review and share it with a friend or family member who needs to hear this, because we'd love to be able to reach more people. So thank you for that. So our guest today, Miss Christine Jewell. Hello, how are you doing today? It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you clearly, and don't worry if you feel like the video on your end doesn't look as crisp or whatever. Don't worry. We actually do release this on YouTube as well. So, but the recording is always sharper after the post-production end. So don't worry about that, because I know it can look a little fuzzy sometimes on your side. So our guest today, Christine, was actually not on my radar, but a dear friend of ours, Luis Diaz, who really was the catalyst to the Strong by Design podcast even starting. And if you go back just a few episodes, you can listen to a terrific conversation that I had with Luis all about how Strong by Design came to be. He had reached out to me some weeks back and said, hey, I think I have a terrific person for you to get to know, and I think she might be a great guest on your show. And she's got a podcast just starting, and so we had a great call, and here we are. So she's doing a lot of the same stuff that we're doing, and she has a terrific background in the world of health, and has a huge heart for God. And so it just seemed like such a perfect combination that we just settled on doing a podcast together right away, and to help help her in her journey, in her podcast journey, because that's it's at this point we've been so blessed, it's time to give back a little bit. So Christine, if you would share with our listeners a little bit about you and your past and your journey in getting to this point.
Yeah, I'd love to. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me. Thank you for, everybody out there listening and giving things to aspire towards, right? Like where you guys are at in the journey of the podcast. It's good to remember in the beginning, right? Everybody starts somewhere. And so it's so easy to compare. Oh my gosh, look at your life. Look at where you are. And, even people say, oh, you must be so lucky and you're so blessed. I'm like, yeah, I am. And, it takes a lot of reps to get here. And so you've given me something to aspire to for sure with the podcast and what you guys have created with the community and everything. And I'm really excited to be in this conversation with like-minded individuals who are giving back and blessing and pouring. And, one of the things I always say is like, my gifts are not mine to keep, right? My gifts are not mine to keep. It's so that I get filled and I pour them back out. And that's why the birth of the podcast, my podcast has come out recently. It's just, I could feel it was time to release the next gift, into the world. But thank you very much. So a little bit of background. I don't know how far you want me to go, but I'll just kind of start with the baseline foundation. Is that,
go deep. We want it all. The glitch, the glam, and the not so great spots.
Yeah, well, I'll just say that I believe that since the beginning of my existence on this planet, I have been basically trained in evolution, change, transformation of like totally burning everything down, having to rebuild, recreate in a whole new environment, new identity, new realities. And so as far as back as I can remember, even as a child, my dad worked for the CIA. So we moved, I was born in Lancaster Air Force, and Edwards Air Force Base, but then it was like off to Europe and we moved every 2 years and there was a lot of change, right? There was a lot of change, new country, new people, new everything. So as you guys, I'm sure, have talked about on the show, your nervous system and everything becomes ingrained in like, oh, it's time to change. I'm on a cycle, right? It's time to like shed the old and embody the new. So that was kind of like the very young age. And then my father was also an alcoholic. So we was like heightened nervous system, always on alert, a lot of change, a lot of not knowing what to expect. And so just a lot of just being on edge, being addicted to adrenaline, kind of, and cortisol and stuff. And so I sort of found my way through, after many, many years of hardship as a kid, into athletics. That's where my love started for training. Because, training is really what got me grounded in the beginning, right? And I think that's so true for so many of us. I was an athlete. I ran track and soccer. Training was where I got my sense of purpose. I got my sense of identity. I felt like I had something to focus on that wasn't destructive, like what I was seeing going on in my world. And so I loved it. And, with a little bit of focus and the right coaching, I became very good at what I did. And so that was great because it provided so many roots, right? That are not destructive. You're not out partying, destroying things. You have something. And at the same time, that's where I kind of got the addiction for performance, right? Because I got paid for scoring goals. I got, you get the accolades for the achievements. And it's all about the performance pressure. I think that's where that started. So it was like the good and also what comes with that, And so sort of, I want to call it like what my drive, my ambition, my focus, everything that I started focusing for was always like getting to the next level, right? And it kind of became my MO for the next 30 years, 20 years. I just hit 45. And so went through, got married, started a business with my ex. We built it up, and then that marriage crumbled to the ground because it was time to, instead of expand in the right way, you're always pushing, not recognizing what's breaking down around you, right? And the first marriage gets burned to the ground along with the business that was generated. And it was like, okay, we get to rebuild. And I started my business on my own in 2010, which is when I opened my holistic health and wellness facility. Because again, I hit that crossroads of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go back to like a 9-to-5 job, have to go into the city, do everything I hate. I had 3 kids and it was like starting from scratch. And at the time, I remember I was actually training for world championships, triathlon world championships.
Really?
And, yeah, I was. So I went to world championships a couple years in a row. And again, always in athletics, right? Always a hobby. Never really like, this is the thing for me. I always was coaching on the side or being coached. I was in it, teaching, training, whatever. But that was 2009 was the year where I was like, I'm going to get in alignment with my passions. This is what I love. And I remember my coach at the time said to me, you gotta open your own studio, and I was like, with what? I have no money. I didn't have any money at the time. The divorce was really nasty, really bitter. and I had 3 kids, and it was like all the odds are stacked against you. And that's always how it is. All the odds are stacked against you. I was actually living with my girlfriend with my 3 kids because I didn't know what to do. And it was like, I just felt the pull in my heart that's like, yes, just say yes. And this is the thing is like, we never know how. It doesn't make any sense, but you just feel this like pull, yes, yes, yes. And so I rolled the dice. I sold my wedding ring to get $4,000 so that I could pay for first and last month's rent in this tiny little box that we started in. And that was the start of my health and wellness facility that I had for 10 years. And it was funny because the name of it was actually Push. Because that was still very much the energy I was in. I rolled the dice, I'd push, and everything was about pushing. And it was great because I finally had this like meeting of my passion, the things that I love to do, but I was still from that energy of driving, trying to get away from something. Does that make sense? I call it like the fire underneath your bum instead of the fire in your heart. Yeah. And it was like, get away from the pain of the divorce, get away from that. And I could feel the pull. And yet it's so easy to fall back into that system of just drive. So I had that business for 10 years. And then I started noticing, as I'm sure you guys talk about on this show, that a lot of the things I witnessed, whether it was the same 30 pounds people were trying to lose or the autoimmune diseases I was dealing with, chronic fatigue, whatever it is, joint pain, inflammation, postural issues, strategy and tactics only hit so many people, right? And it's like, what about the other 80% or whatever that couldn't sustain it? And they were like roller coasters. And I was like, wow, this all has such mental, spiritual, and emotional roots. And I got so lit up kind of diving into that work over the last 5 years. Now it's been 7 years that I just like, my heart started swelling and I started really just falling in love with the neuroscience of behavior, the spiritual work, around the heart and bringing people back to like proper order in their spirit and getting their mind, their emotions, and their heart right so that they could start to live in this like place of health, but not just in their physical bodies and their relationships and everything else. So yes. I started to segue out of that more into this arena a few years ago when I started my online practice, and I brought that into my physical bricks and mortar business a little bit. And then COVID just really provided the perfect doorway for me to shut the door and go all in on this. And it's never how you think it's going to go, right? Like I had been positioned to sell the business and I just bought a commercial property and then COVID hit and literally overnight you go from having $1 million business or whatever to nothing. And you're like, God, why? Why? Like now what am I going to do? And it's just like, okay, I got to let go, trust that I'll be fully supported. You can always make more money. I can always make more money. And it's tempting to try to recreate what worked, but I just was like, okay, now's the time. I closed the door. I'm actually in Canada, so we've been shut down for a long time. So gyms just reopened in the last few weeks. So we're talking like a good 18 months, gyms being closed, studios, people couldn't see their trainer. I just knew that was coming. So I just made the leap to say we're shutting that down. I'm going fully online and I'm really supporting people in this capacity of just mind, body, spirit, and really coming back to our original design. And so that's where I'm at today. And I was able to, but I've had so many of those breakdown moments of total burnout. I only touched on a few there, but There's been so many, right? And it's like, now it's like, do we need to keep having these breakdowns in order to have this expansion and breakthroughs, And I believe the answer is no, when we're willing to stop pushing and forcing and really just allow God to start working in our lives and get things in alignment. Yeah.
And I think that's a big problem or a big hurdle or obstacle, whatever you want to refer to it as, for many of us, is that we become really one-dimensional in our lives. Whether, we want to really fast forward our way professionally. So, we're so wrapped into our career, and then we're kind of failing in our marriage or in our parenting or in our spiritual walk or in our friendships, and then if you start to focus in those areas, then sometimes, but there is a way actually. And a lot of people think, oh, well, you can't have that balance. Like, there is no such thing. But honestly, I think that's just something I think that maybe we tell ourselves because, it seems like too much to try and focus on keeping everything, in good housekeeping or in alignment. But it is very possible to excel in all areas at the same time because they feed off of each other. Go into a little bit of that because I think for people listening, and I think for just the average person on the street, if you ask them, they would probably say, in order to be terrific in one area, you probably have to be an underachiever in other areas.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? It's like we're also taught like laser focus, head down, grind, right? Grind, push, hustle, and we have heard this all the time. It takes sacrifice, right? If you want to be successful in business, it takes sacrifice. You got to, and yes, I agree, it takes sacrifice, but sacrificing of the right things, not the wrong things. But I think what you just sort of like nailed, I'm going to go back to what you just said, is a singular focus. When we're very much caught up in the physicality, like the physical reality, we still think I have to be the one to do everything, to make everything happen in my business or at home and whatever. We're so focused on that one thing. And it's like we forget that there's like so much more to the whole, right? It's like focusing on the one ankle that's got a torn ligament, but you don't realize it's got a ripple effect going through the whole body, right? And so sometimes we fixate on the wrong thing. But one of the things that has been huge, and I want to bring this up, is that this idea or a mindset that we're taught that we always have to go to the next level or get to the next level keeps us like, whenever I'm thinking like, even if we say I gotta get fit, that means like, I'm not. I'm not. Even if I'm working out, even if I'm eating healthy, I'm not in shape yet. I'm not there yet, right? And it's like, I have to get something. I have to go to the next level. And it's always this like ascension, instead of let me create the space for more health to flow into my life. Like, so, right. So a lot of the things that I talk about is, instead of trying to go up or get more of or go to the next level, let's expand our ability to hold space for more health and vitality, for more love at home, right? So we get to the point like, of course there's more than enough love to go around. Of course there's more than enough, right? Because if we cultivate an environment in our body where health is just the standard, that one beer on the weekend isn't going to kill you.
Right.
Right? If we cultivate the space, right, for just like peace in our home to be the normal standard, when someone has an upset, it doesn't have a ripple effect that ruins everybody's weekend. We just have created the space for emotions to kind of come and go. We've created the space for life to happen to us, and it doesn't totally throw us off the rails, and then we contract again. And we play this like roller coaster, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of times people are afraid or not willing to really look at themselves, really introspective stuff, like how can I fix myself to be better for others, right? To better serve others. And create something that's tangible, like a checklist, or start writing things down. I mean, every successful person that I read about, like the Craig Ballantynes of the world, and all these highly successful people that are coaches and mentors and help millionaires and billionaires perform at a high level. It's the freedom through structure.
Yes.
And the written word, and like putting things on a calendar, and when you start to focus in on everything, but you don't have to start with everything on day one. I'm just saying, the 30,000 foot view, if you start putting things down on paper, or logging and tracking and setting a schedule up and having a plan and following, you will see improvement, you will see progress, you will build momentum, and then that momentum, goes into all areas. Yeah. They feed off of each other.
Yeah. I think, what's been interesting is I really honestly know a lot of people don't know what to write down. They
Right.
don't know what to track. They don't know what to measure. They don't know how, whether it's journaling, whether it's it's like, it isn't art. Yes, write it down, like get something on paper. Also, I think people don't do it because they just don't know what, where to start. So it's
Right.
like, I'm always like, start with, get clear on what you get the polarity in place. Like, what is your absolute no more? I will no longer tolerate this as my reality. And these are all the red flags that indicate I am going back into that pattern. And what is my clear yes, the fire in my, like, this is my yes. And let me get that emotion on both ends of it so that I have some buffer, right? It's structure, because it's like you're putting the walls in. Let's say this is my bumper rail over here, and then I can start to set, things that are like in alignment with what I do desire, right?
Absolutely.
In the different arenas. But,
It's big rocks. It's the big rocks thing, the Rockefeller habits thing, right? You gotta start filling the, say you have a big empty barrel, you got to put the big rocks in first before you put the little rocks in, before you put the sand in, before you put the water in. You can't do it the other way around. If you fill up the big barrel with water first, there's no room for anything else.
Yes.
So always start with what are the big movers in your life, the big priorities, and maybe put a piece of paper down, right? Big rocks, little rocks.
Yeah.
And then from there, just in the world that I live in, there's so much great free advice out there on how to get started, free coaching, free mentorship stuff that's out there. But honestly, I think having a coach or a mentor that can just help you in an area that you're really weak in. I've been in the health and fitness space for over 2 decades. I have a weight loss coach. Yeah. Because I needed accountability. Yeah. I needed direction. I needed somebody to discuss things with, and guess what? I've lost 20 pounds in the last 3 months, 3.5 months, because I had somebody that I was accountable to. Yeah, for sure. And I knew what I needed to do, but just knowing that didn't help me. It didn't move the needle. I needed to get poked. I needed to know that every week or multiple times a week, I got to log stuff. He's going to be looking at it. We're going to have conversations. I'm like, geez, I better. And then sure enough, over time, what happens? The disciplines sink in. The good habits are there now. And now it's just, now I'm off and running.
Our team would like to thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. And if you're enjoying today's show, please share this episode with at least one friend or family member who will benefit from this message. And please subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Go to strongbydesignpodcast.com. That's strongbydesignpodcast.com. Let's get back to the show.
You said something about the rocks, and I totally agree with you. I'm like thinking as I'm holding this cup, you've got your cup. It's like we're like a container, like we're like the container, and there's only so much that can go in. That's true, right? Like there's only so much that we can hold in here, at least if the container is this size. So we can put the rocks in and stuff, but 2 things have to happen. We have to put the right stuff in, and then we want to expand our ability to expand the container so we can hold more. But I think what I know is a lot of people go, what are my big rocks? And I'm like, yeah, let me put them in. But they start freaking out because there's no space for those big rocks. So it's, once we get those things, like what are the key big ones that you're going to focus on? Of course, it's going to naturally crowd out something else in our life. I was on a call, just a very simple call the other day with a bunch of guys, and they were just like, I got to focus on not drinking soda. And they were just so fixated on like, I'm addicted to sugar. And I don't do a lot of health coaching anymore. Honestly, I talk about energy, and, the addiction to sugar is one of the pieces of it. But one of the things that I was saying is like, what if you stop focusing on the soda, and you just start pouring water in, starting at the top of your day, and tell yourself, I can have all the soda I want after my gallon of water. Right? Just drink a gallon. Like you can drink all the soda you want every day after you drink the gallon of water. And it's like,
true.
naturally you're going to crowd out the thing. And this is true for anything, whether it's
Yes.
filling ourselves with awesome content and then we crowd out the noise of the media. Like, you know, can I really infuse myself? But to your point, it's like, yeah, I think a coach is so powerful in those moments because we want it, when something falls away, you know, old parts of us are grasping, right? And it's like people are like, what's wrong with you? You're not going to come out with us and do this thing anymore? No, you're not going to watch this kind of movies with us anymore, or whatever it is. And there's like the old trying to dig at you. And so having something that is really anchoring you, I mean, obviously the spirit is huge for this, you know, but also having a network or a coach that is also like that grounding place to come back to, that is like, yes, reminding you of why you're doing this and
Yes.
pulling you back to that level of conviction and accountability. But the accountability is about pulling that conviction out of you over and over and over again, right? So that you're just like, yeah, like there is no other option.
It's exactly right, and I guess I'm a little spoiled because I have accountability on so many levels. You know, not just at home, but in my work, in my more in my professional life, because of my boss, who's also my best friend, but also really believes in coaching and mentorship for him to continue to
Yes.
level up. So
Yes.
it's just a trickle down into his team, and so I'm just, like I said, I'm just very spoiled because he invests so much in his team to continue to be able to level up, so to speak, or expand.
Expand,
right?
yeah.
Expand our you know, where we're at, our capabilities, and really it's mindset shifting. I've been reading the book Limitless by Jim Quick, and you know, so many of us, it's just the words that we use in our own mind, and we're very negative with how we talk to ourselves. And I think if some people can just start weeding out some of the negative self-talk, it's just that conversation, the internal talk that we have, where we're kind of constantly telling ourselves, no, you can't, not good enough, why even, you know, why are you doing this, why, you know, and really just changing the conversation just a little bit, it can just have a massive effect. A ripple effect, right? And people will notice, and you're going to notice it. You're going to feel better. It's going to help with anxiety and worry and stress and all these. I mean, we're our own worst enemy in so many ways, but the cool thing is, it's correctable.
Yeah, and the awareness is huge. I talk a lot about conscious language, which is exactly what you're expressing right now, right? It's the subtle language is so powerful. You know, we're told like we can use the word to burn something down, or to pierce a heart, or to build someone up. But there is a ripple effect in our nervous system. Our muscles respond. Everything responds to sound, frequency, and the association of words. So one of the things I talk about a lot is like being conscious of the words that are coming out. Is this expanding me right now? Like, do I feel expansive when this physical word comes out of my mouth, right? This sound, or do I immediately feel a contraction? Because I'm either, you know, poured, like there's more flow happening, so I'm receiving the strength faster, I'm integrating faster, I'm healing faster, or I'm closing, you know, I'm constricting the tube, because you can feel it in your body, right? And right away, it's like, oh, I feel the pressure and all that resistance, and I don't even know what it was. I'm like, it was that one word, but you're so conditioned. You know, I think of the one that I just comes up all the time. It's so simple. It's not even negative talk, but even something like when people say, I'm trying to get fit. I'm trying to get, you know, I'm trying to be more loving at home. I'm trying to be patient and I'm like, even if you say that, like, I'm trying, right away it feels like, ugh, there's like a boulder in my way, right? Like I'm trying to get there, but there's something blocking me. And the simple thing is just remove the word. Like, I'm being more patient at home. I'm getting fit. I'm, you know, being more loving to my spouse, whatever it is. It's like a simple it's so subtle, right? But it's so subtle and so powerful. I remember all those years of having the facility, and people would be doing burpees and lifting weight, and they'd be like, oh, I suck, you know, or saying things. And I was like, what are you doing? You're literally training that into your nervous system, and your muscles actually weaken. So you are reinforcing what you just said, because now you're physically anchoring that into your body. So yes, be mindful.
It's all mindset. I mean, look at the highest level athletes. Look at anybody who does anything at a super high level. If their mind is not in it, if they're not focused, if they're not, bought in or buying in to, what they're, whether it's a championship match or whatever it is, their performance will suffer. It doesn't matter how much experience and how talented they are. The great example in the book that I referred to just a minute ago, Limitless, is Jim is talking about a superhero flying her way to save the day, like Captain Marvel or something like that, right? But along the way, as the bridge is crumbling and people are trapped and she needs to get there fast so that she can rescue everybody, she starts to have flashbacks of all the moments in her life where she was told she wasn't good enough or couldn't do that or all these negative things. And then when he said it, and right before she gets to the bridge, she decides that she's just going to go sit on the curb and sulk and feel bad about herself. Does that sound like a superhero movie or what? And it's kind of like, no, that's not what the superhero is supposed to do. It's like, no, they were defeated by themselves, by their own messaging, their own self-talk, their own limited self-talk and negative self-talk. So, I mean, I think right now where we are in this world right now, I think there's a lot of people that are living that way. And it's frightening, and I feel awful for them. Like they don't have the right words to express themselves. They don't have the right power source to plug into, and I, obviously for you and I, it's a spiritual thing, right? We tap into God. And we tap into our friends and the culture that we have where we work and to our family and people that that we decide that we want to be surrounded by. But a lot of people don't have that. They're surrounded by negativity. They're surrounded by coworkers that don't like them or don't say the right things, or bosses that are awful to work for, right? I mean, there's a lot of people like that.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm super passionate about this topic. Like, you just throw a flame on there. But, I know this in every cell of my being, is that the battleground is the mind, right? We hear this all the time. Even the people who are like, mindset, which is true. But a lot of times we're in this battle with ourselves, and it can feel like this tug of war. We're trying to be positive, and we're in this, like, I'm trying to be positive. I'm trying to talk myself into it. But there's so much noise. And so to all the listeners out there, I want to say, like, make no mistake, the battleground is in your mind, but the battle is for your heart. The battle is for your heart, because your heart is the gateway to the soul. And, again, the superhero story is if you win the battle up here, you get to the heart, people become disheartened. They lose heart, they lose faith, they lose courage, they become discouraged, they become disconnected. So, how do we tap into that heart power? Because that's really what the threat is, right? To the ego, to what I believe is the darkness that's consuming a lot of the world right now, is just like, we have to protect this heart space and know that the battleground is the mind. And so all of this noise and information that we're surrounded ourselves, with all the time, it's not new. Those doubts have been there for thousands of years. The same beliefs that we call limiting beliefs, it's just noise that's been planted. And we have just trained ourselves to tune in to certain frequencies, like that doubt frequency, that fear frequency, and it's become familiar. So it's like a radio channel that's always getting, oh, that's familiar. You don't even realize you're turning the dial to it because it's on autopilot, right? So this is really about training the mind to become a tool instead of becoming a tool to the mind, right? Like, I don't want to be the tool. I want to use this as a tool to support me, to navigate me to whatever. And it's like, this is where I think we really get to be like, okay, I get to shift the order of allegiance here, like the mind does not control me. something controls the mind, right? It's either going to be everything external or it's going to be from within. So it's like, which one is it going to be, right? So a lot of times I'm like, oh, we get to shift the order of allegiance. Like, you serve me, I don't serve you.
It's really cool, and it's such an interesting topic because the brain and the mind aren't the same.
They're not the same. Yeah, I really think we need to say that.
Your brain is an organ. You know, like a lot of other organs in your body, right? It has a purpose. It has, and it's a very important organ, maybe the most important besides the heart, right? But the mind is different.
Yeah.
That's your consciousness. That's your soul. That's who you are. Everybody has a brain, and those brains are quite similar looking in size and shape and everything else. But everybody also has a mind and a soul that's unique. That's a fingerprint for them. Mm-hmm. And some people's have put in the work on that mind, on that mindset.
Yeah.
And even people that I've met, I've been blown away by people in their 20s sometimes, and I'm like, wow, I wish I was where you're at when I was in my 20s, you know? Like, they just have such a great, mindset and awareness and outlook and perspective and all these things that seemingly come through age, through experience, through maturity and stuff. But some people those seeds were planted by probably some really good parenting, or they were surrounded by just some terrific people. And so I guess my point is, all of us need to focus on this and think about these things and think about how we can continually make strides in that direction of self-improvement and mindset shifts and thinking. Worry doesn't help anybody. What does worry, and anxiety and all that stuff, all that internal pressure we put on ourselves, what does that do for us positively? Yeah. What does that help us with, right?
It's like being in a rocking chair and you're like worried. You're worried. It's like you're moving, but you're not going anywhere. Who has added even one day to their life by worrying, right?
Correct.
So it doesn't make anything go faster. In fact, it just slows everything down and makes it way more painful and harder.
Right.
But I think the key is understanding what you said is the mind is a consciousness of all of this noise and programs that we have decided to plug into and adapt to. And so once we recognize that, we can actually pull back and start to observe our thoughts and observe our behavior. You said experiences, right? An experience happens. It's like, oh, well, that didn't go according to plan, or this isn't going according to plan. Let me pull back and see what's actually going on. Let me get myself out of the trenches, and we can start to become an observer of the thoughts. Because doubt isn't, again, like you, I'm sure you experience doubt. I have thoughts of doubt all the time. I just choose not to embody them and invite them in the doorway. It's like, okay, I feel it or I experience it, and then it's like, we don't get to plug into that frequency.
we feel the doubts knocking, and sometimes we even open the door a little bit with the chain still on the door, and we just kind of see the doubt, and we're like, we're not going to let you in.
Yeah.
And we close the door, and then we continue to focus on what's going to move us in a better direction. Where I think a lot of people, when that doubt comes knocking, they open that door wide open and just let it flood in.
Yeah.
I do think so. You have to be a good gatekeeper. I think you said the word gatekeeper. Did you not? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, for me, it's really knowing that is floating around. It's not unique to us. It's so easy to feel alone. Like, I'm the only one who has these horrible thoughts or these fears about what's happening in the world right now, or, this low self-esteem about my body or whatever. But the reality is it's been there. That noise has been there for thousands and thousands, as long as humans have been on this planet,
Right. So
we can rest and know that we're not alone, become an observer. And then really, I would invite anyone listening, like, what are you anchoring yourself back to? Because, to have that level of conviction or confidence or, steadfastness, you've got to be grounded to something, right? And I think that's another huge thing is, like, people don't know what anchors them, right? So it could be the relationship, but then when the relationship goes sideways, they don't know who they are, and that doubt and all that stuff floods. Obviously this is why I believe, having something in, like, your spirit, your soul has got to be anchored. to knowing that you are supported. There's something so much greater than you at play here. We have a God who is like orchestrating so much behind the scenes, and you are not so powerful that you've screwed up his plan for your life. Even if you screwed up the last thing, he's going to give you another door pretty soon. You just have to position yourself to say yes.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. To help our show reach more listeners just like you, please let us know how we've changed your life by leaving a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Go to strongbydesignpodcast.com. That's strongbydesignpodcast.com. Let's get back to the show.
For some people, they're like, oh, I don't know. I've never been very spiritual, or I've never really, gone down that path, or I don't think that's for me, or
yeah, that's okay.
And you know what? Everyone's in a different place, right?
Yeah.
In their walk, in their journey. Some people have very strong faith. Some people have none. Some people grew up in the church and then have completely done a 180 and gone in a different direction because things were jammed down their throat, right, from a young age, and it left a bad taste in their mouth. But I think ultimately, we can all agree that we all need to be anchored to something good, and that being a buoy just floating out in the ocean, not anchored to anything, that doesn't serve you well. It doesn't serve others well at all. Yeah. And then you get people that really have to attach themselves. Their identity is in other people. Yeah. Rather than in something that's rooted in something a little bit better. Like we can't find our identity in others and living for others. Yeah. We have to look inward a little bit more. Yeah. And so that's in our walk as a Christian, I don't achieve my identity. I receive my identity.
Yeah, you operate from that identity. Correct. Yeah, and so, I think and again, regardless of where people are in their spiritual walk or not, or faith, it's we know the biggest fear for most people is just to sit with themselves, right? The amount of people that are like, I'm terrified to be in the quiet because I'm afraid of what's inside, what's going to come up. So my invitation would be, take a deep breath and start creating this space to get to know the inner man, your inner woman, and what lights her up, what excites her, because when your heart lights up, that's a sign, right? Follow the signs. But a lot of people are so disconnected from their inner man, their inner woman. It's sort of like they forgot that person, they forgot. They become a shell of all these other things everyone expected them to be. Yep. And then the minute they are expected to, either take a vacation and not be working, or go for a walk in the woods without their iPhone, or just, the cable doesn't work and the internet doesn't work, it's like people start freaking out. I don't know what to do with myself, and if you're in that space, that's a great sign. Follow the sign and go inward, because in that space you'll meet the thing that gets you anchored.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of thoughts about what you were just saying there, but one thing that really comes to mind is just getting back in touch with nature. Yes. I think it's so, unplugging and disconnecting, even if it's just at minutes at a time, is such a powerful thing for us. And, for any believer, it's the first revelation of a creator, of a God, is nature. That there's just so much goodness and so much beauty and so much. I mean, you can walk outside and walk around and look at nature and find 5 or 10 things within a few minutes that blow your mind when you start thinking about it. Yeah. And so I think taking a trip somewhere where you're in nature, whether it's going to the beach or going to the forest, going to the woods, doing things like that is such a healthy. I don't know anybody who went on a hike or something in the mountains or something and thought it was awful. Yeah. They always feel like, wow, I really felt like something there. I felt a presence there. I'm like, well, yeah, that's
creation.
That's what you're supposed to feel like, because it's a pretty amazing planet, and to go out and experience it and not be inside 4 walls on a computer, is pretty darn important to do on a regular basis. And I think more people, if they just did that one thing, could start to cure themselves a little bit.
Huge. We are not created to be indoors, And I think we reconnect to that wild part of ourselves too. I always think about Adam was created in the outback, from the dirt. And whether you believe in the original story or not, it's every man I think can relate. Like I love the rawness of the earth, the wild. I crave that raw, outback. And I think Eve was created in the garden and surrounded by beauty, surrounded by nature. It was safe and beauty invites, like nature invites. It's steady, it's grounding, it's raw, it's real. It is such a beautiful reflection of our original design. Yes. That I know that when we get back in it, whether we're camping or whatever, we start to remember what we forgot.
That's right.
I went camping 2 weeks ago by myself, and I have to say this is the first time ever I took myself camp. I was like, I'm just going to go. I live in Canada. We have some beautiful national parks, provincial parks. The lakes here are amazing. I just took a hammock and I slept out by the lake in this hammock. And it was just so simple. I didn't have a bunch of stuff. I just took a hammock, a little bit of food, book, and just hung out. And it's just like, it's so life-giving, So I really encourage anyone. I'm sure you're doing it, but get in there, because we forget when we get surrounded by everything that's plastic, synthetic, chemical, you forget your natural design.
No, you're 100% right. It's such a great point, and seemingly a very simple thing to do, but people find it can be very challenging in this world that we've created for ourselves, where it's you can't take a minute just to breathe and like you said, have a little quiet for yourself, quiet time. People are running and occupying their brains with all these other things that aren't necessarily as helpful or productive. And so, you got to start somewhere, but start small and start replacing. Everything I've read is just start small and start replacing one bad habit with something good, one good habit. And, like you said, it could be the soda thing, right? Or it could be the, drink a glass of water before you have a soda, okay? And then see how that goes. Or go for a 5-minute, 10-minute walk after you eat lunch, or after you eat dinner or something. Or, do anything, but do it in a small chunk of time. And make it something that's fairly easy, and then again build momentum with that one thing. Once that's locked in and kind of becomes a regular part of your life, a routine, and then you can start to, adopt a few new things into your life. And I speak from experience. These are things that I've been doing. I have devotional time and sometimes I miss it in the morning. So what do? I find a time in the afternoon to squeeze it in. And then there's another topic I'd love to touch on with you is giving ourselves a little bit of grace when we screw up, because like I said, we can become our own worst enemy. We're so hard on ourselves when we maybe start something and then we have a bad day. We fall off the wagon or whatever. So talk about just giving yourself a little bit of grace and being able to get back on track, maybe the next day.
Yeah. It's so true. What a topic. Grace is the most powerful thing, and we've been trained to think it's so weak. But what comes to mind for me, two things. One, grace, I think, is something a lot of people don't connect with at all, right? They're just so hard on themselves. And one of the things I talk about a lot is the spirit of dissatisfaction. When you're dissatisfied with a lot of things in your life, the way your kids are behaving, the way your husband's showing up, the way your wife is, the way your team's not doing, there's just this constant expectation. And if you're like that, that's a good sign. You probably don't practice a lot of grace for yourself, because if we are struggling to be compassionate for others and our patience is like zero, and we are reminding people, holding things over their head, even if we're not doing it out loud, but it's just oozing inside of us that, oh, you're messing up, I'm messing up. That is such a toxic concoction.
Yeah.
It is such a toxic concoction. And you know, when I actually teach this concept a lot of grace and power being the foundation of how we lead, and I think of a king, right? A king that is ruling a kingdom, and it's like somebody messed up. But are you going to be the king that's like off with their head, you know, lock them up? Or do we want a just king? Like, I can be powerful and just, right? I can be leading and just and merciful because I can see the heart of the person, that the intention was good, right? So the intention this weekend was to go out and have a great date night and everyone to get along. And then, you know, that trigger came up and I said the wrong thing and I reacted and then I had wine, or, you know, and people start this lashing. And it's like, can I be I use the terminology of a queen and a king a lot because to me it's such a good anchor to remember. Can I be a just queen and a just king and exercise some grace, go back to the intention, and like, okay, it's time to get back in alignment. Because the more I dwell on it, the more I feed it. And we're not here to feed that in the kingdom. You know, it's like, so that's just with anything, you know, it's patience in the process, but it's so much more than patience. It is grace. And I think, honestly, I want to say real quick too, right now what we're seeing a lot going on in the world, there's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of finger pointing, shaming. You should be doing it this way. You should be doing that. Because people are all entrenched in their beliefs. And, you know, there's a lot of sayings around, be a lion, don't be a sheep, be a lion. And we have this like thing, right? But let's be honest, not everyone has the capacity to lead. Not everyone has the capacity to know the right direction. There's a lot of people that are scared, that are confused, that are disoriented, and they need a leader. They need a leader. They need a lion to lead, right? And so to me, it's like sometimes I'm the lioness and sometimes I can feel like a sheep, a little bit disoriented. And, you know, that's when I'm like, okay, I get myself regrounded, recentered, and let me shift back into leader mode. But let me also exercise some grace for myself for the moments that I get sidetracked or disoriented, and especially for others. Because I really believe once we start extending this to others, it really starts to shift the game, you know. And I wanted to say that because I think it's really relevant to what's going on in the world right now.
So relevant, so relevant.
Let's be the safe space. Let's be the presence. Let's be the direction, because people are grasping. People are grasping for somewhere to go, some safe place to land, something, and they'll attach to anything that gives a sense of safety, you know. So
I almost feel like wouldn't it be an interesting test, and this is not a test that could even possibly happen unless the grid was completely like blown up or something, but if we could just do away with all the social media outlets for like a short period of time, I think how much better people would feel. I got to be honest, because it's like a frenzy in there of people finger pointing and having these conversations that they would never have face to face with someone, or if those conversations did happen, they would look very different. I think we're much more. Most people do not like confrontation. Most people don't. They don't look for it. They run from it. But if there was a disagreement on something, or you were at odds, at least if you were together in the same room, that maybe you would be able to have some compromise or find some common ground. And I don't think the social media world that we have right now is doing us any favors. And in fact, it's almost like media outlets of any kind have really tanked, I think, and they're letting people down because of the tone of the conversations and the focus on the negative things, and right, and what's selling, what's the hot thing, what's the wow factor stuff, what's the shiny object, and that's what gets all the attention, whether it's negative or not, but most times it is. And that's where, and then people are just having news on social media, and they're so plugged in, and they're so confused and they're so frustrated and all these things. So
it reminds me of like a fishbowl, and but a big fishbowl. If you visualize like a fishbowl and there's all these fish and someone's standing up top just dropping these little things and all of the fish are just like turn and go, and we're just literally swim, exhausting themselves. And I'm like, okay, who's gonna be the fish that don't fall for it, right? Like, let's start to swim in another direction and really pull ourselves out, because that's exactly what it is. You just said, and the noise and the negativity. But the other thing too is like, it's then we're meeting that energy with more of the same, right? It's like we're responding to fear out of fear. And it's like now we're multiplying fear. We're creating more of it in the collective consciousness because we're actually adding to it. And I caught myself the other day because, somebody posted something and I went to respond and I could feel like almost like this pull, right? And it was like a siphon on my energy in my life. And I said, no, I'm not going in there. Like, I pull out, and it's so tempting though, right? Because that the physical manifestation of what you read is just the end game result of the mind, the emotions, the spiritual world. So I'm like, hey, I play over here. I can move things over here. And to your point, like when we're in a room together, even if we're disagreeing, just with my presence, I can start to shift the atmosphere. Or you could, right? Like you could just hold the space differently without even saying a word. But when we're in these battles over, comments or whatever, it's harder to shift. You can't bring presence that way unless you've really mastered the art of that, So it's just, I totally agree. That's something I'm huge believer in. Just do not feed more of what we don't want to multiply in the world.
That's right. I think put your emotions and your energies into something that's going to just serve you well, or serves others well. And yes, in my profession, I need to kind of be plugged in. It's what I do. I work online. We have a big following on lots of different platforms, so I kind of have no choice. But going back to that, getting in nature and unplugging and doing some things that help you just to create a little bit more separation and a little bit more of that margin, and time away is so beneficial. Christine, I want you to please talk about what you're doing here with Warriors of the Heart and with your new podcast. I'd love to just know a little bit more about that for our listeners.
Yeah. So Warriors of the Heart is exactly for warriors at heart, because so many, I'm going to be the first one to raise my hand. If anyone would say, were you stubborn? Yes. Were you persistent? Yes. Were you a driver? Were you a warrior? Like I love the fight. I love the transformation. I love to have, we're trained that way, right? To have the battle worth fighting for. And I do believe that that's part of our original design, having the right battle to fight for from the right space. But we end up becoming warriors of the world, chasing all the wrong things, hustling, striving, fighting the wrong battles with our partners, against ourselves, and we fight at the wrong level, the wrong battles, chasing the wrong things. So to me, it's like so many, and a lot of what we've been talking about today is those warriors of the world that are out there slaying and fighting and exhausting themselves and just not have the energy or the space to love the way that they're created to love, to serve the way they're created to serve, right? And they're exhausted. So Warriors of the Heart was birthed actually after a season of being in like the dark void. I felt like I took about a year off at the start of COVID, and I still coach my clients, but I spent about a month in Arizona, and I was hiking and praying and meditating and resting, copious amounts of rest, because I kind of was hitting a little bit of adrenal fatigue burnout from years of pushing that had come up through the system. That's a whole other different topic. And through my season of rest, I could feel like God was just calling me, to birth this new brand and talk about this. And so the Warriors of the Heart birth, came out of that, saying like, we got to get people to rise and be warriors. Yes, be warriors. I made you to have a battle worth fighting for, but to really unlock the power of your heart, train your body, and upgrade your weapons, your arsenal, of tools that you're using to engage in these battles. So that's really the Warriors of the Heart is designed for people who want to build thriving relationships, thriving bodies, heart-centered missions. And yes, be warriors in this world that we're in, but be the ones that create a different reality moving forward, right? So out of that, I have some coaching programs, and they're really about reconnecting to our original design, like how God created you to be as a man, what your role is, how I'm created as a woman. And yes, I do believe we have roles, we have gifts, and when we come together from our original design, it becomes an unstoppable force. Like when you get like the masculine and feminine coming together under one mission, one God, it's powerful. Like it becomes pretty unstoppable. The creation force that comes through us. I mean, life is a perfect example of that, like birthing children, but we birth so much more: businesses, ideas, and it's like we're, kind of stewarding our own little kingdoms within the greater kingdom, right? So it's like, that's really the Warriors of the Heart movement. And so from that, I have some coaching programs that I offer, and I wanted to continue to get this message out and share and just make it available to people who didn't know about it or didn't have access to coaching with me at a more intimate level. So I could feel, I'm like, okay, I got to get this podcast out. I wasn't sure if it was going to be YouTube or the podcast. I love to speak and teach and train, and this is like my give back and pouring into the world. So the Untamed Life was launched just 2 weeks ago, and the Untamed Life is exactly what it sounds like. We are not designed by God to be domesticated, tamed, neutered, stressed out, numbed out warriors of the world. We're designed for the wild, raw, original, untamed design where we serve one, right? And then we serve each other, but from like that raw place. So that's, the podcast is called The Untamed Life, and it's really about, living the fullness of life that we're created for by not conforming to the ways of the world. So I talk about relationships, wild, deep, loving relationships, a body that is really like channeling a lot of life force, because that's what we are, these vessels, right? Yes. And there's just so much available to us when we start to tap into what I call supernatural strength, courage, love, all of it that we have access to when we break free from just trying to operate in this physical reality. I always say, like, it's time to operate in the supernatural and bring it into the natural.
Yes, I love it. It sounds terrific. Are you familiar with Erwin McManus?
Yes.
Yeah.
From LA. Like Mosaic, right?
Yeah, Mosaic. Yeah. He has the book "The Way of the Warrior," which is
I think it's on my shelf.
Came to mind a few times. Yeah, he's terrific, man. I've met him. We've had him on our show before. He's a wonderful human being, and so just thought of him as you were speaking through that.
Yeah, and I do think, like, right now we could see it. There's a lot of these, like, warriors rising, king rising, queen rising, lion, lioness. There's a great book here that's on my table here about lioness rising, and I think, like, we're in this time where God is really calling. People are feeling, hearts are being stirred. People are, dropping to their knees, looking up, looking around, looking for leadership. And I think, like, right now is not the time to water down our message. It's like, if you're being called to be a leader and help create this new space, let's go.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I love it. Mm-hmm. We need more voices like yours, and because what that does is your voice creates 10 more voices similar to it, So just think about that for all of you listeners out there. If you stick to your guns, if you stand up and stand in your faith when you're tested, that's going to have an impact on your sphere of influence, the world that you live in, and it could positively impact 10 people, and then those 10, 100, right? And it's that a wonderful exponential kind of growth there. And so now's not the time. I like that to just sit quiet. Now's the time for everybody to just, people are looking for something. They're looking for something to believe in, to buy into, that's meaningful, that has great impact long term. And,
and each one of us has unique gifts. Each one of us, yours are unique, like a fingerprint. Mine are unique. So, I did this for years where I was like, I'm not good enough yet, or I'm not where I need to be yet. And it was this game of comparison, which is another trap of the world that we fall into. And it's like, just go, just go with what you have. And I always say, like, for this journey, we pack light. We take only what's essential, and God will provide the rest.
Right. That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
What are the best places for people to find you, Christine? Obviously, you're the Untamed Life podcast. If they start searching, they're going to start to see episodes there. Once this releases, you'll have a handful for them to start listening to, which is great.
For sure.
And then, what other platforms and social channels can they find you?
I'm on Facebook, so they can find me on Facebook at Christine Jewell. Also, the Warriors of the Heart Facebook group is a free community for anyone who just wants to plug into a community of people that are like-minded on the similar path. So I drop in there with a lot of free trainings, like member-only offers and free, workshops and stuff. So there's a lot of value in there. So those are definitely like the key spots. And then when people join the Facebook group, I have an assessment tool that I give away, which is I call it the readiness factor. It's a readiness factor assessment that shows us, is what you desire actually what you desire? Because a lot of people are chasing things that they don't want, and then they get it and they're unhappy.
Yes.
The second thing is, am I positioned to receive what it is I desire? And the third is, am I positioned to sustain for that, right? So the readiness factor assessment is available for people who join the group, and it's just a really quick assessment tool to give you a snapshot of where you are with that. And I can share the link with you as well.
Yes, please go ahead. What is it?
Oh, I can.
You can say it. You can say the link right now, and then of course in the description area we can make sure that it's there for people.
Okay, let me just pull it up here.
Well, while you're finding it,
Yes.
a quote came to mind as you were talking, because it's one of my favorites that really isn't necessarily a faith-based quote, but I think it has huge ramifications in in really what life is all about. It's from Jim Carrey, and everyone knows who Jim Carrey is. Jim Carrey's a Canadian.
Yes.
Right? He's one of the funniest men I've ever seen, right? And he has a quote. He says, "I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that it's not the answer." And I think we're also caught up in the material world and in stuff and in possessions and in, if I just had that, I would be fulfilled or happy.
Yeah.
And guess what? I mean, that's coming from a man who's had more fame and more money than he knew what to do with. And guess what? That didn't fill his gap. That didn't fill him up either. And so I think that those are just such a good lesson for people, is that you gotta tap into something that's a little bit more eternal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not part of the finite game, part of the
Right.
infinite game, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
What's
good.
So what's that link?
Okay, well, the link is it's https www.christineline.com and then /readiness factor opt-in.
Okay, great.
I can send it to you. Type it out.
Yeah, and I'll do a nice link in description area, so people just click something that looks simple and it'll be able to go right to where you want it to go, which is fantastic. So it's Christine Jewell for all of you listening, Jewell, and just type that in, and you will start to come across all of her stuff. But we will have all the links for you in the description area. Christine, it's really been a fantastic conversation. I really wanted to just explore your world and your message, and just have an interesting conversation, which I think we did that for sure. And I got to know you, our audience got to know you, and hopefully we've got some new fans and followers for you out of this as well, which is always a good thing. So thank you for taking the time to be on Strong by Design today.
Thank you for having me. I totally love it. And thank you to all of you who are listening. And you are part of spreading the message, all of the messages that we share. So
that's right.
So good.
That's awesome. Thank you, listeners, for another terrific Strong by Design podcast show. Hit that 5-star rating. Share this with a friend or family member who can benefit from this terrific message today. And we just thank you so much, as always. Remember, you're created and made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You are strong by design. And we'll see you next week. God bless.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.